All right, I do see that we've got, well, I was actually going to say, can we keep the slide up? If you don't mind, Brian, thanks. So I do see we've got Becca joining us. Thank you, Becca Tisdale from Talent Together. And we're going to have the slide up on the screen with the questions that you're going to be talking about. I know you wanted to spend a few minutes talking with some updates, but just to give people in the room and on Zoom, so a little bit of background reminder that Talent Together was a big topic of conversation at the retreat up at Northern earlier in the summer. And so of course we sent out the survey to ask for questions from all of you that you would like to have addressed, and compiled those down where we saw similarities, tried to compile them down and basically provide them as they were written. So some of these questions are quite specific and you may recognize them because you might be the author of the question. And so Becca has agreed to come and talk with us and address these questions for us and share a little more about Talent Together. So I'll turn it over to you, Becca.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. I'm wondering, so we actually did put together a couple of slides that go through each of these questions. Is it okay if we share our screen? And I'm saying we, like there's another person sitting next to me, but my teammate, Sarah Campbell, I think is also on the line. Sarah, are you here?
I am. Hi,
okay,
everyone.
Great. Yeah. Sarah is our Senior Director of Finance and Operations. She leads a lot of our work, our partnerships with EPP. So I asked her to join us as well.
Sure, that's fine. We can stop sharing and if you want to share.
Great. Okay, I will pull mine up while we're doing that. Actually, Sarah, are you able to share? Can you share since I'll be doing most of the talking?
Yep, just give me 1 second.
I'm saying that now, but you might actually end up doing most of the talking.
Yep, let me start at the beginning.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'll just give a quick update. So thanks everyone for having us. Sorry we aren't there in person, although it looks like we have a lot of good company virtually as well. So we are going to, I appreciate all the questions in advance. We'll spend the bulk of our time going through them. I wanted to take about 5 minutes just walking through a couple of updates and in particular our impact so far that we've had only because of so many partners that are in this virtual or in-person room. So I'll spend it, go ahead, you can go to the next slide, Sarah, thanks. So my plan was to spend about 5 minutes just kind of going through, can you go back to the last one? Thanks. Going through a couple of quick impact updates. And then I've got slides with the questions that were just on the screen where I kind of walk through some things specific to each of those questions. And then my hope is that we can then spend the rest of the time with any additional questions that either surface as I'm going through the answers to the questions you shared or any additional questions that come up. So I'll move through this first part very quickly. Go ahead, Sarah. So walking through just where we are, we've actually, Talent Together was just an idea 2 years ago. We've really technically only been around for a full year in terms of funding and having a team and actually having candidates. But we are truly a statewide initiative made up of all 56 Michigan ISDs. We're just pulling this data, but we think we're also in approximately 500 local school districts. So we have candidates in every single county of the state. And again, that's all because of our partnerships we have with so many of you. So it's really exciting to see the impact we've been able to have. In terms of our partnerships, you can go ahead to the next slide, Sarah. This slide represents all of our partners. Again, many of you here are on this slide. This slide has gotten, I guess the logos have gotten smaller over time because we have added a lot of partners. We're really grateful to all of you for everything that you've done and continue to do to help us grow Michigan teachers. Go ahead, Sarah. In terms of numbers, within our first 2 cohorts, we have over 1,300 candidates that are enrolled in programs that lead to degree in some cases and ultimately certification, and some that lead just to certification. We have had over 2,700 applicants for our first two cohorts. We have several candidates that were waitlisted from our second cohort. We wanted to be conservative with the numbers that we accepted from our second cohort, just because we at that point hadn't had confirmed funding. So we're thinking about what our process is for removing candidates from the wait list right now. We graduated a number of candidates this year and expect to see a significant number finish this year. That number is just going to continue to grow every year. The bulk of our candidates, I think it's around 55%, still need to finish their bachelor's degree. So of course, they're not finishing within a year or two. It will take them longer to do so. We're really proud of the collective efforts that we've had with all of you to get to this 31% number. That is the percent of our candidates that identify as people of color. It's important to note that this number is much higher for our second cohort. Again, with our first cohort, we didn't have a team yet or funding. We opened our application before we had secured those things. So we didn't do a lot of targeted recruitment. Our second cohort is actually 42% candidates of color. And our retention rates are really great too. And I think it's important to note that our retention rates are even higher once people enroll in programs. And so this number includes accounts for attrition before people actually apply to an EPP or into a university. And so that number is actually much higher for candidates once they start. Go ahead, Sarah. So I think the headline here is that together we're counteracting the myth that nobody wants to become a teacher. I'll also add that we have an interest form open for our third cohort. Sarah, do you know what that number is roughly last time you checked? How many interest forms we have?
Over 2,000.
Yeah, so we continue to see a large interest. You can go ahead to the questions now. So those are just the quick headlines of where we are. Again, what I'm going to do is walk through each of these questions one by one, but a couple of them felt like they were connected. So I wanted to just capture those things together. I think it's probably going to be easier if I walk through each of these questions and then open it up for any follow-up questions rather than going slide by slide. But somebody who's facilitating this behind the scenes will let me know if that's not okay. So the first question, and you'll see on each of these slides that I share, the questions are in the blue text box. So this first question was around Talent Together's work with EPPs to coordinate and document outcomes so that EPPs have autonomy over required state surveys, outcomes data, year-out data, internship evaluation tools, and portfolios, those that are required both by MDE and national accreditors. I think the headline here is that we're fully transparent with our data. With all of our partners, we've worked and are continuing to work. This was not something we did last year, again, because we were building some of the plane while flying it. But our aim is to have FERPA forms signed by all of our teacher candidates so that we can share data with each other. Some of that data is captured here. Some of the things that Talent Together will share, a projection of the apprenticeship year based on what we see and what we know, completion of registered apprenticeship standards, application, selection, and retention data, of course. We can sort and filter that data in a lot of different ways. One of our key priorities last year was to adopt systems to manage our really large data sets. So we have access to all of those things, MTTC passage rates, placement, and retention. So I don't think, and I think you're going to hear from some of our partners after this, but we certainly don't have any intention or desire to hold back any data or to prevent you from all doing the things that you need to do and want to do for state reporting and national reporting. Sarah, if you go to the next slide, I'll give the headlines and then maybe you can add some things. Related to data, right now we are in the process of holding quarterly check-ins with each of our partners. One of the topics of conversation is data sharing, but we have established some regular cycles for this data sharing. Sarah, what would you add to this? Like, what are some of the things that are coming up at those conversations?
I think one of the things that is coming up is the balance between the live data sharing. So we have some shared Google, Google slides that list the candidates, where they are in the acceptance process and enrollment process, and end of term data sharing. So looking at grades and GPAs, and what is the cadence that we want to be receiving the data, but also what is the cadence that makes sense for our EPP partners. And then talking through like what are the different formats in which we can share our data, so it's the lowest lift on our EPP partners.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so again, if you have questions about these things or follow-up questions, jot them down, and then we'll have lots. We should have at least 15 minutes at the end, or maybe 12 minutes at the end. Another question, or a couple of additional questions that came up, seemed to be around the theme of MDE and EPP instruments, and like what is Talent Together doing? What instruments and tools do you have? So the two primary questions here were around what's required of our portfolio, and how will Talent Together utilize EPP created and MDE created instruments? So a couple of things here. One, Talent Together doesn't have any rubrics. We're not, outside of evaluating candidates' progress towards the registered apprenticeship programs, we're not evaluating candidates at all. Of course, the Department of Labor requires the registered apprenticeship program, or RAP standards. So we have adopted those, and we do evaluate our apprentice teachers. That's a subset of our candidates towards those standards. One of the things that we are working with our partners with is to coordinate some of these pieces. So we have a team of folks that are actually holding follow-up meetings with our partners in the coming month to really talk about how we make sure that we are not duplicating efforts. We are not trying to duplicate things. We're not trying to replace anything that EPPs are doing. We know we can't, and we don't want to. We also don't want to make anything more complicated for candidates. We know that it's already confusing enough when they have district rubrics and district tools. We do have two frameworks that we use. One of them is the teacher leadership framework. That's the tool we primarily use in coaching and professional learning for our mentor teachers. So all of the mentor teachers that are placed with apprentice teachers, they go through an orientation with us, a training with us. They receive some direct coaching from our staff. So we use that framework in that work. Again, this is something that we aim to work with our partners to try to streamline this and make sure that we're not duplicating efforts or doing things that are unnecessary. The teacher development framework is used with coaching of uncertified candidates that are already acting as teachers of record. So these are the folks that have been employed maybe as teachers of record. They need to get the certification. We are doing some coaching of those candidates, but again, trying to coordinate those supports with any other supports that they might be receiving from the EPP. And I'll also add that one of our goals is to utilize our staff in the way that makes sense. I think an example of this is we actually have some staff members who are working directly with the professional innovators and teaching team, so that those candidates' experience is streamlined. So we aren't trying to do something twice or duplicate what's already happening. In terms of the portfolio requirements, that's a little more nuanced. I think we have known from the beginning that requiring a portfolio might not be the right decision. All of these decisions and frameworks were informed by work that our design team did. Our design team was made up of folks from across the state who are school and district leaders, many of whom have been on committees that have developed state-level frameworks. So everything was developed with the core teaching practices in mind and with other MDE-related tools. We've done some crosswalks of those things and are happy to share those things if that's helpful. But the headline around portfolio requirements is we're revisiting it. We have not required the portfolio yet. We didn't require it for our first cohort. We may require it for a small percentage of candidates who don't go through the apprenticeship program. Again, those folks who are already teachers of record that are responsible for a classroom of students but aren't certified. But that's something we're working on with our partners. We've been intentional in not implementing that because we don't think we're ready to and may not need to. I think the question about perception is, I think that's on this slide. I have two screens up here. I'm not maybe we can have more conversation with that when I open it up. Outside of saying what I just said, we aren't trying to duplicate things. And I think our partners would say that we are collaborating with our partners to make sure that there is a streamlined experience. And we have not ever, and don't intend to suggest that things should be changed in terms of the instruments that are being used. Go ahead, Sarah. Thanks. Okay, great question around expansion to high school pathways and community college, tribal college pathways. The answer is yes. We are planning to expand and we're already doing some of this work. So we actually have a group of 9 recent high school graduates that graduated in 2024. We're piloting a pathway for them. Those candidates were all required to get a recommendation from just like our other candidates, from administrators in their school, but they also had to get sign off from their HR department that they would hire them as a paraprofessional. So these 9 students are working in the schools they graduated from, the districts they graduated from, as paraprofessionals, and they're all attending Ferris as a cohort. So we're trying that out, but we've got some other things in the works as well. We're also leveraging Michigan Reconnect. So we have a number of candidates that don't have any, that come to us with no credits towards their degree. We've been working directly with Reconnect navigators to support those candidates towards the associate degree before they enroll in one of our other partner programs. Right now we have 41 Reconnect enrollees. We also have a new partnership with Washtenaw Community College. They've been wonderful partners. We'll, I think, do a lot of different things with Washtenaw, but right now they're supporting a group of community members who weren't previously enrolled in school-based positions to become parapros while they're working on their coursework. So this is an idea around how we start to backfill for the vacancies that might come up as we're moving more paras into teaching positions. Lastly, we're leveraging Golden Apple. Golden Apple is a program that the Michigan Educator Workforce Initiative has funded to come to Michigan, focused on developing high school students to become teachers. So we're also working with them and trying to link those Golden Apple folks to Talent Together so that they get some of the resources and supports through Talent Together. I will say that the high school pathways is the greatest priority that our board has, that our team has. Our goal is to continue to expand to more community colleges. So we've been talking to all of our partners about what are the community college partners you have, what articulation agreements do you have. And in terms of high school pathways, we've had some great early conversations with MSU about leveraging some of their existing programs and thinking about how we create options, connections through CTE programs as well. Okay, I think I have one more and maybe 2 more, and then we can open up. Thanks, Sarah. So this question came up about funding. This is a tricky question because we all know what the budget cycle is, right? So, and I'm not sure when these questions were shared, but the headlines I would share here is that our board is committed to development of a braided funding strategy. We've spent a lot of time over the last month with our board, including at a retreat that we held in September. That included scenarios for how we reduce costs, how we secure additional funds. We have started to work with the Department of Labor and work with local workforce boards to think about how we secure workforce funding. That is one of the benefits of having a registered apprenticeship program. So those are the headlines I can share there. Go ahead, Sarah. Oh, you know what, Sarah, can you actually go to the next slide and then come back to this one? I moved it to the wrong. Yeah. So one thing I wanted to hit on with funding is where our money has gone so far. And Sarah's the expert here, so she could say a lot more about this. But when we look at our spend and our first NDE distribution of funds, over 64% of our initial distribution went directly to our post-secondary partners, either in the form of payments that have already been made or encumbered funds for the tuition and fees for the cohort that we accepted. Our other biggest area of spending is in our registered apprenticeship costs because we pay for the apprentice teacher's salary, benefits, and for the mentor teacher stipend. So this money goes back to schools in the form of reimbursement for those costs. Sarah, anything you would add there?
No, you hit on it perfectly.
Wow. Okay. That's a compliment. Thanks. Can you go back to the last one? Okay, and probably the most meaty topic that I'm sure we'll have additional follow-up questions. I'll just like fully transparently, when the Board of Superintendents came together and started talking about talent together, part of the original conversation was to become a credentialing body. Knowing at that time, as well as right now, there's a moratorium on that. So it wasn't possible then, it's not possible now. I think where the consortium is we are not currently considering that. We don't see the need for that right now. We have plenty of partners who are serving our candidates well. The only way that I would see that changing is if we end up not having partners that are serving candidates and schools' needs. But it is something that a lot of you in this room have heard me say out loud, I think probably is, I always say, like, why would we do that if we didn't have to? As somebody who's developed a lot of alt route programs in Michigan and in different states, it's a lot of work to do that. If it's not needed, we won't do that. So that is the headline there. We aren't offering coursework and we have no plans to offer coursework. What we do have is Canvas, and we have some supplementary online modules. What's developed thus far are things that are working on non-academic and instructional skills. So supporting candidates with MTTC prep, helping, there's a module on like, how do you read your syllabus? Navigating coursework. How do you access resources from your EPPs? So there's actually a module where we say, if you're at this institution, this is the page you should go to for XYZ. So it's really just trying to streamline things for them, make it more accessible, and help them persist through their program. We will develop some supplementary things around foundational reading and serving students with disabilities, but those are supplementary and not required for anybody. It's there for people as they need it. But we don't call it coursework because it's not coursework. Okay, that's it. That was a lot of me talking. I think we can open it up for any additional questions now.
So thanks. A couple of things before we toss up for questions. Can you please share those slides with me? We can add them to our main slide deck that we make available to everyone. That would be great.
Sure.
And then we've got about 5 or 6 minutes for questions. If you're online and you want to do the little virtual hand raise, we'll see you and call on you. You can unmute and ask your question. Anyone in the room here have a question that they would like to ask? No. Seeing any hands raised at the moment here in the room or on the Zoom? Trying to use wait time. Okay, yes, I see online. We got Jennifer. Go ahead. Can you...
Good morning. I just had a question about what the employers are, kind of what are they signing on for? Do they have some sort of commitment to, making sure students can get to their classes on time? Or I just got an email today saying a student who's taking a class now has an after-school teaching assignment during the same time as the class that she's taking. So how are we navigating all of that? Or is there anything we can do better to help the administrators at the schools where these individuals are employed?
Yeah, great question. All of our district partners do sign a commitment agreement. That's new this year too. So we did not, again, those of you, on my screen, I can see you, Jennifer, and I can see Joe Lubig. So, hi, Joe. And so those of you that have been our partners from the beginning, like you both have, know that last year we didn't operationalize as much as we have been able to this year. And so this year, all of our district partners have signed a commitment agreement. There's some there aren't specific requirements around release time. That is something we would like to get to for sure. But there are bullets around like the types of things that we expect them to do to support candidates. So I think those will be topics of conversations as we continue to move through our quarterly discussions around what are the things that we aren't seeing from district partners that we need to see. So that's not really a great answer, but we also can share that. Yes, I'm seeing a question about the student commitment, we can share like those copies, the commitment agreement from the candidate and the commitment agreement from the district. And then Jennifer, I would say that particular situation sounds, very specific, and we should work through that together, and share with that district that's not going to help that person become a teacher. And the entire goal is for that person to become a teacher. They can't do that without completing their courses.
Well, and that's exactly, exactly what we're trying to, I feel awkward trying to problematize those kinds of situations when that seems like it ought to be navigated between the student and their principal or supervisor or whatever. I can provide all kinds of suggestions. How about don't take the job, but then what do you do financially? It's a tough juggling act. Or can you get somebody to do Tuesdays because you just have class on Tuesday, or whatever? How do we could we do better by offering our schedules to the principals so they know when the students are taking, because not every class is going to be offered asynchronous online, because some content just doesn't lend itself to that.
Well,
or is that
there
part of the contract with the student has with their school, that they give the principal or superintendent or whomever they work for a copy of their class schedule so they know what's happening? I don't know.
That's a great idea. And that's certainly something I would say, bring that to your court. I think you guys you all just had to reschedule your quarterly check-in, but once it's rescheduled, bring that specific example, because those are, like, we just had a suggestion from CMU yesterday. I think it was CMU yesterday around the timing of the FERPA form. Like, those are all the things that we're learning together. So provide that as a suggestion, and we can help troubleshoot the specific situation, because it is expected that person should be able to do coursework after school. So
I just feel bad for the student. I mean, that's really because they're getting put between rocks and a hard place. So I will add that to our meeting when it gets rescheduled. Thank you, Becca.
Okay, so Becca, are you able to see the question that was in the chat? I can't pull it up on my screen here.
Yeah, I referenced so we do have a candidate commitment form too that they sign. It's related to Talent Together policies and things like that, but it's also related to their commitment and progress through their courses. If they become an apprentice teacher, progress towards the apprenticeship standards, and then also their commitment to the district after they finish their certification. So we can certainly provide that. In terms of what the EPP's role is, we have individual agreements with each of our EPP partners. A lot of that is around cost, but we had other things when we developed our partnerships that we committed to jointly. Yeah, we can definitely, when I send the slides, I can send the copies of the commitment agreements as well.
Thank you. We've got a question in the room here.
Yeah, can you remind us the mentor stipend that the mentor teachers receive during apprenticeship, and also the stipend that the interns receive?
The amount?
The amount.
One reminder about the amount of the stipends that the mentor teachers and the students receive, right?
Yeah, the teacher candidates, the apprentice teachers, they're paid a salary that is 80% of the first year teacher salary in their district. So that is not a consistent amount. It's based on their district salary for first year teachers. And then they also receive benefits. That's just during the apprentice teacher year. So candidates who don't do the apprenticeship or before the apprenticeship year, for those that do, they're paid whatever the salary is for the role that they're employed in. The mentor teacher stipend, Sarah, is at $7,500?
Yeah, it's $7,500, and that's issued directly to the mentor teacher throughout the course of 1 year.
Not to the school. And that's a full school year.
Thank you very much. We are out of time for questions, but I appreciate Becca and Sarah joining us, and we'll look for those slides. We'll pass them along. Like I said, we'll add them to our main slide deck so you have all that information. But we appreciate you joining us today.
Sounds good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you
Bye,
so
everyone.
much.